This is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm John. Don't tell the aliens.
And we are very happy to welcome as our guest this evening author Marie D. Jones, who's the author of numerous books, many including topics covering the paranormal, metaphysics, and other issues including lost civilizations, aliens, concept of reality, and so this is going to be a very interesting show. Marie, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
We've actually been pretty excited this week because you write about a lot of different topics that we're interested in, and we don't want to monopolize what you're talking about, but I know one in particular that I know has John's interest piqued is your book, 1111 Time Prompt. Why don't we just jump in a little bit and talk about some of those concepts and see where it takes us?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Go ahead and tell us what brought you to write about that concept.
The 1111 book particularly?
Yes.
That, I had written a couple of nonfiction books on my own, and through one of them, the book PSIence, PSIence, I met Larry Flaxman, who is my co-author now. He had contacted me about science and said how much he loved the book, and we got to talking back and forth, and over the course of about a year, decided that we had a lot in common, and why didn't we kind of team up on some projects. And he's in another state. He's in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I'm in San Diego, California. So we thought, well, you know what, why don't we write a book together? That'll be our first project. And it's like, oh, yeah, that'll be easy. He had no idea what was in store. So we approached my publisher, New Page Books, Michael Pye at New Page Books. I said, I want to write a book with Larry. We want to write about, some paranormal, blah, blah, blah. We pitched some ideas. It was actually New Page Books that came back to us and said, why don't you guys look into this 1111 thing? And we were like, huh? Okay, what? Yeah, sure. We called each other. It's like, well, what is he talking about? And so we did a little bit of research and realized that there was this sort of global phenomenon going on where people were seeing specific number sequences. We like to call them time prompts, but they don't always have to be on a clock. They can be really on anything. But they were just repeated number sequences over and over again, and that the one that seemed to be the most popular, no matter where people were in the world, was 1111. So we thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. So we took the book deal. And so the more that we got into it and started writing and researching, the more we realized that, this just isn't just about people who see 1111. It's about numbers, number synchronicity, the mystery of numbers, what they symbolize, how really everything in our reality comes down to mathematical ratios and certain numbers, and really just how important they are, despite the fact that most people hate numbers because they think of them in terms of like balancing your checkbook or high school math. But what was really fascinating for Larry and I is we had never had 1111s. And once we started writing it, obviously our brains sort of latched on to that whole concept because we started seeing it all the time. But what we realized is that we both did have other number sequences that popped up throughout our lives. For me, it was 333, always. And still, to this day, I wake up most nights at 3:33. I don't know why, but, it must mean something to my brain. So it really ended up being a fascinating look at this global phenomenon and why people think it was so important, what it meant to them individually and collectively, and just kind of took off from there. And it was our first book together, and it's our best-selling book still, which is really cool.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the theory that goes behind these prompts, these number prompts?
There's two. And our job, and we always say whenever we set out to write a book, our job is to be objective. We do inject our own opinion, of course, but what we want to do is present our readers with every side of the story, so they get a real well-rounded read when they read one of our books. So when we came into the 1111 book, and, you know, it's still selling, it's still so hugely popular, and every day I still see people on Facebook, oh, you know, it's 1111, they get all crazy. And so the two theories that we looked at were, we call the metaphysical and the scientific theory. So let's start with the metaphysical theory. The metaphysical theory suggests that people are seeing these specific number sequences that have a subconscious, symbolic, possibly even archetypal message to give. And that message can be individual. In other words, you can have see a particular number sequence throughout the day or the week or the month or your whole life that has meaning to you as an individual. But we also realize that there's a collective time prompt, and 1111 is the most popular collective, meaning that a lot of people see it, and a lot of people seem to think that it means something very particular. A lot of people truly believe that 1111 is sort of a poke from your higher guides or from God or the universe, or it's sort of a prompt to pay attention, stay alert, get in the present moment. So that's what we call the metaphysical explanation. The scientific explanation is really a lot more boring. But basically, when our brains latch on, when they see something more than a couple of times, it becomes almost habitual for the brain to then seek out that pattern again and again. And so, for example, and something like 1111, it's a number sequence that has perfect symmetry, and it's very interesting. You're going to notice it. You may not notice 1279, but you're going to notice 1111. And so the brain has a tendency to start looking for that pattern. In other words, it's 1111 2 times a day, every day, morning and night. But you may not have ever looked at the clock until maybe somebody said, oh, have you heard about the 1111 thing? Now all of a sudden your brain is seeing 1111s on the clock. It's seeing them everywhere. So it's almost like that old story where you go to buy a certain type of car that's a certain color and you think nobody else has one. You're going to be so original, so unique. And the second you drive off the lot, you see them everywhere. Because up until the moment you paid a lot of money for that car, it wasn't important for you to see that. Your brain was filtering out that information. Now all of a sudden it's become very important. So those are the two explanations. The truth is that it could be both that are operating, because the people that insist that those time prompts are meaningful, they're not lying. You know, those experiences are meaningful to them. But it also could be their brain kind of helping. You know, it's almost like getting little prompts from the brain.
I actually have, I do a lot of reading, but I didn't start looking into the synchronicity with the numbers from a clock until I started experiencing it in my own life. So I can't say that scientifically I was looking for it until I started noticing it more often.
Yeah, it's like catch-22. Which one happens first?
Right, it's like the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah.
So now from a spiritual standpoint, I agree that it's a trigger. I think that it brings us into the moment of that specific time, but I also think that there's a universal energy that is trying to bring us into that moment for a specific reason, whether it be to calm us down or let us just be mindful of where we are right now.
Right.
I kind of see them. I kind of see them as letting me know that I'm on the right path. I notice that certain times that if I start straying from my own personal spiritual path, that I don't notice things like this as often. But once I'm back on my path, I notice that these specific certain times of day will show up more often. Like I'll get the 444. That's pretty common.
Oh, do you? Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that's one that I noticed, because my ass usually isn't up at 4:44 in the morning, so I know I'm not seeing it at that time.
I've done that too. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: do you, when that happens, I mean, because I totally agree with you about getting people in the present moment, and I think that alone is critical, that these are little prompts to get us into the present moment, because we rarely spend time there, do we? You know, we're always stressing out. But so let me ask you, when you see a time prompt, whatever your numbers may be, I mean, how do you feel? Do you kind of notice any other synchronicities that happen afterwards, or do you just sort of, you know, lock in? How do you feel? Does anything happen immediately, or do you feel like it's happening on a more subconscious level?
What I usually happens to me at that certain point, if I notice something like that, like a specific time of day, and I don't look at it like just as 444 or 555 or whatever. I look for the consistency in numbers, so like 1010 or 1212 or whatever.
Patterns.
I look for the patterns, and when I see those patterns, I usually stop and I say, okay, I get it, I understand, and then I go on. What that does for me is it's almost if you look at it from the Buddhist standpoint, it's and I'm not Buddhist, but I do read a lot of Buddhism. Is that it's a time when you bring yourself into you and you listen to the universe, you listen to your own intuition, and when your intuition talks, that's when we should be more mindful of it and really understand.
Yeah. I like that you brought up mindfulness, and I think that really is. You know, we talked to so many people when we wrote the book, and maybe one or two said that they felt that these time prompts were negative, but mostly because they were annoyed that they couldn't quite figure out what they meant. But what we realized, too, and I think, you know, the same went for Larry and I, is that the meaning can come to us subconsciously, where we're not even consciously aware of the benefit or of what we're trying to be told in that moment. But it's like trusting that we're getting it. We're getting it on that subconscious level. Numbers are the language of the universe, so if any other force, I don't care if they're extraterrestrial or what, wanted to communicate with us humans, they're going to do it through numbers. They're going to do it through that universal language of mathematics.
Sacred geometry.
There's a part of us, yeah, exactly. There's a part of us that gets the symbolism of numbers that show up, and we don't have to have somebody sit down and say, okay, let me explain to you what seeing these numbers means. Our rational conscious mind doesn't need to hear that. We get it on that other level. But it's really funny because so many of the people that we talked to said they felt the same way. They felt like had they not paid attention, they might have missed a synchronicity. And it also got them to start being more aware throughout their day so that they didn't miss those synchronicities that come at you all the time. But if you're too distracted, you're never going to know they're there. You're never going to see them.
Well, you know, Dorian Virtue says, and if you follow any of Dorian Virtue stuff, a lot of the numbers like 1010 and 1111, they're angelic meanings. I don't know that I necessarily believe in that. What I believe is that, and I just lost my train of thought. It must be the tinfoil hat.
It might be. I tell you what.
Go ahead.
That happens to me a lot.
This is so tough for me.
It's the aliens. I'll play devil's advocate for a minute while he thinks. How's that?
Wow.
How about what I find is my experience isn't so much related to time or time prompts, but just numbers that come up at times for me that when they're used, things tend to go more positively for me, and it's just something I've noticed over the course of time that, and for me it's usually 74 or 47. Don't ask me why. But if those numbers are somehow connected with whatever event or action I'm doing or whatever, it seems to work. What do you think?
Right.
What do you think that is it just sort of that underlying theory of mathematics and nature that this is based on? It's not really time per se, but just everything?
Oh, I think it's everything. I mean, time is just another form of measurement. It's, another way that we sort of try to explain our reality and give it some kind of structure. But everything comes down to number, comes down to mathematics, comes down to certain ratios and measurements and mathematical formulas. And my feeling is that whatever, even if it could be our higher self, some, like you were talking about during Virtue and the Angels, I think that's one interpretation. I'm not huge on that one, but I think that there is a smarter, wiser, more locked-in part of us that goes beyond our surface, that is sort of locked into that, to the grid, to the field, to everything that exists on a deeper, more implicate sense. And the language, the way to communicate with that information I think it's going to be in numbers. It's going to also be in symbols, which I think is why we react to certain images and symbols so deeply, and we can't really even explain why, because it goes beyond words, it goes beyond vocabulary and description and all of that left brain stuff. And so I think that time prompts are communicating with us. You can, argue till the cows come home as to who's doing the communicating. There's no proof for, angels or guides or God or what have you. I think we maybe kind of know that on an individual level. Maybe it's your own intuition talking to you. But the fact is, you're getting information. You're getting it in a symbolic sense, and you have to leave your subconscious to the process of understanding it, because I'm not sure it can be processed consciously. So I think that each person probably looks at them a little bit differently, and yet, again, there's a collective belief that they're saying something. With 11/11, what Larry and I found that was so interesting was there was a connection to the whole December 21st, 2012 thing, the idea that the world was going to shift or whatever, in that people who had looked at the atomic clock, the Naval Observatory has the most accurate clock in the world, and that apparently winter solstice on that day was supposed to begin with 11:11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So, everybody was giving all sorts of meaning to 11:11. This is going to be the moment that everything shifts and everything changes. Now, for some people, maybe it did, but obviously for the collective, we're still here. So it's just so strange because people are still, I think sometimes people want to come up with an all-purpose explanation, and there may not be one in this case. It may have something to do with our individual development and evolution. So your time prompts are telling you something, mine are telling me something, and then every now and then we all get the big ones that I think are trying to wake us up in a global sense.
And that's where I was going with that. I'm glad you said that, because really I love Dorothy Virtue's stuff. I don't always necessarily agree with it, but that's what it means to me. Or maybe that's what the information that she's given. We all have different spiritualities. We all have different belief structures. So everything that we see doesn't necessarily pertain to anything in a specific religious sect or a spiritual sect.
Exactly.
What it does, it's what it means to you as in your spiritual journey and your path. So, Lisa and I, we think similarly, but we have different paths. I follow more of a Native American side where, she's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
She drinks a lot.
Excuse me?
Well, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that, was I?
Yeah, from the man with the tinfoil hat.
Yeah. But we function well together because we respect each other's spiritual beliefs.
Exactly.
And I think that's where a lot of, and we're going to get way off. I can go for days on this. But
well, you know what? You're bringing up a good point. We probably need to leave ego out of this.
It is, yeah.
Says, wait a second. This means this for me, so it's got to mean the same thing for you. That doesn't seem to apply here with these sort of unusual experiences, as we all know.
Right.
I almost view them sometimes that, and I don't know that you can say it's, from the universe or it's subconscious or whatever, but it is our own internal prompt. And I think sometimes that, like when John was saying that you don't notice synchronicity, that you feel like you're on the wrong path, I think obviously stress and daily life can get in the way, but I also think sometimes, at least for myself, that I tend to notice them when something's trying to tell me something, and if I'm not noticing them for a while, that's not necessarily bad, you know, but when I do start noticing them, that's when I just kind of put my antenna up a little bit to say, okay, what's going on?
Well, that's critical, I think. I mean, you can notice them, but if you don't really pay attention or try to open yourself up to, okay, what are you trying to tell me? Mm-hmm. You know, I suspect that a lot of people who ignore this kind of thing, you know, they probably lose a lot of good intuitive information that is coming at them. They probably lose a lot of opportunities. They probably lose a lot of synchronicities that could bring them in touch with a particular person they need to know or the right job or what have you. I really feel like there is something, and again, we can argue whether it's external, internal, or both, that is trying to get us to pay attention. And because we don't do that enough anymore, these time prompts are stepping in and saying, look, I know you're going to notice me, and I'm going to make sure you do because I'm going to show up in your life today 25 times, you know, and it's like, okay, surrender.
Well, and I think that, you know, there are other functions that come through like this, and some people just think hocus pocus or whatever, but almost déjà vu or other experiences have a similar function. It's that, you know, kind of wake up, pay attention to what's going on, or hey, maybe you ought to follow up on this, whether it's meeting someone new and you notice a synchronicity or a pattern. Maybe that's telling you don't dismiss this person out of hand, or whatever it may be.
I actually think that falls.
Pay attention.
Yeah, well, it falls back to the fact that, and we've said this in many shows before, that spiritual growth has changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. And actually, Eric in the chat room brought up a good point that it could actually be a universal language in that we're just learning it now. Although I think that numbers and patterns has been going on for many years. I mean, we go back to sacred geometry and so forth, but, you know, I think that we're becoming more aware of it. I think people are becoming more spiritual and not religious, and I think that that's going to be a huge factor in how people relate to each other from a whole nother level. And I think it's going to change. The earth is going to shift, and it's not, but I don't think it's going to be a shift in the crust. I think it'll be a shift in consciousness.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, and it's like one person at a time, and then it sort of reaches that tipping point where the collective will then shift. And I love the idea that you said about how, you know, these numbers have been showing up forever. And if you think about it, the most crude form of communication that we ever had really was scratches on the sides of walls and rocks where we literally scratched out how many cows we owned or how many kids we had so we could keep track of them. Numbers were a way to measure and a way to make sense of the world that we were in. And so people will say, well, what, you know, look at how technologically advanced we are. We're so evolved. Why would that wiser force communicate with us in something so crude as numbers? But the thing is if you look at nature, everything in nature operates on, it is so sophisticated, the patterns that you see and the structure, it is complex. And we think it's not because we're using computers and cell phones and things like that. We don't realize how sophisticated those little numbers really are.
Well, if you take the technology back, all that technology is written on machine language, which is ones and zeros. So all this technology they think they're on is actually narrowed down to numbers.
Yeah,
so, it's in bits of life.
In its most basic sense, I mean, it is ones and zeros that run the world, run our technological world.
It's either a yes or no question.
Yeah. Yep.
It's really that simple. I mean, I think that we put so much basis on material things that we and you said it, we have to make sense of it. That's how we make sense of it, is material. We don't.
Exactly.
The belief in faith or spirituality from a completely etherical standpoint is becoming more common again, but we lost it for a long time. And
you know, you guys, you've seen the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh yeah.
Hello, we're nerds.
Well, I love that movie because think about the way that the aliens communicated. they did it with numbers. They did it through musical notes, but it's all number-based.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that is the most, you'll hear people in the UFO field, trying to figure out, well, how are they going to communicate with us? Will it be in a particular language or this, that, or the other thing? The thing is, they're going to talk to us in what they know we're going to know, the universal language. And maybe they'll do it musically, but it'll still be based on numbers, because measurement is something that we all get. It's something that we all have to do, whether we're alien or human, is we find ways to measure things and, separate and categorize, and how many and this many and that many. So I really love that movie because it really did, you can argue till you're blue in the face. I've heard people say, well, are the aliens going to speak English or Chinese? Or it's like, what? You seriously think they're going to want to learn? They're going to talk to us the way that they know. We're all going to get it. So, yeah, it's really interesting. But again, when you say the word numbers, people really think they kind of get a negative connotation because of high school math. And really, it's more, they're the most mysterious paranormal things on Earth, really, the way that they're so sophisticated.
Oh, I like that. That's, when you think about it, that's very, very true. Very interesting. And I think the same goes with symbols, and most symbols that seem to have lasting power, or especially over centuries and eons, tend to be geometric, which falls right in the same basket.
Back into sacred geometry.
Because our brains love things symmetrical, and they like everything to look good, look even. But the funny thing is talk about symbols, and for a long time, people have been trying to. I know that a lot of crop circles have been debunked, but I know there's also many that haven't. And the thing is, you've got people trying to interpret what basically are symbols.
Right.
And it's in the interpretation that we have the problems. Whatever left them knows what they were trying to say. It's then up to us. And I think it's the same thing with the time prompts. You could see 444, and I could see it, and we're going to interpret it in two different ways. But if 25 million people are seeing it, then there might be a message that is really meant for the populace that we're all going to get. It's not going to be an individual lesson or message. So it's kind of neat to know that they're operating on both levels, individual and collective.
Right.
Ed Becker says hi.
Hi, Ed. Glad to have you with us. Ed usually has some very interesting thoughts and questions as well. Here, I have a question kind of back from the metaphysical standpoint. For someone who may be noticing patterns, whether it's time, otherwise, with numbers, what advice would you have for them as far as interpretation?
Well, I know that people say there's a lot of books out there, numerology and number interpretation, and I think it's fun to read those. The problem that I have is that there are a lot of different numerological systems. Some of them are very old, and they all have their own spin. So people can get really confused when they read 3 different books, and they're told that, the 4 means this, and then this book says, well, it means that. It's like, you know what? My feeling is the best way you can try to figure it out is to shut up, do a little meditating on it, try to have some time where you're not distracted by external things, and listen to that little voice inside. I think we all know on a deeper subconscious level what everything means, including everything in reality that the brain tends to sort of, filter out because it doesn't have anything to do with our day-to-day survival. So I think really the best thing somebody could do is maybe write down little hunches or intuitions of what they think it means, or when it happens, how do I feel? It's like immediately check in, tune in. How do I feel? What am I thinking? And just see if any patterns arise or anything starts to make sense. And read the books. There's nothing wrong with reading them. Maybe some of them are right, but I've just found that they're so different that it can become very frustrating.
I actually went through this similar conversation with somebody recently, and I like books. I prefer to go by my own intuition, and I think that's what people need to do, is they need to learn their own language, because you're right, and that's what you're getting at, is people need to learn their alphabet. What is your alphabet? When you are in meditation and you see an image, what does that image truly mean? Is it the actual image, or is it a representation of something else? So, and I had to, and journaling, you got to journal. You got to. I mean, if you're gonna learn your own language, you got to write it down. If you don't write it down, you're never going to figure it out.
Well, so, and I like, some people might get freaked out the minute you say the word meditation, but you don't even have to meditate. I think it really is a matter of just cutting out some distractions when this happens and tuning in to your stuff going on inside your head, because we're so outward focused and outward directed. So people go, oh, I've never meditated, or I can't meditate. Don't be scared by that word. You can even just turn within and get quiet for a few minutes, and you might get something. You might get
meditation,
a flash or a hunch.
Meditation is not necessarily sitting in the lotus position and being quiet for hours upon end. Meditation can come from a nice walk in nature. You're just basically pulling back into yourself and pulling the energies back in from the earth, and really becoming more aware of who you are. It goes back to mindfulness, So
you could get on your motorcycle, go for a ride, go out for a run, go take a swim. I think it's just get away from the distractions and occupy your body in a sort of repetitive way, running or walking or whatever. Shut your body off, shut your brain off, and just listen to the stuff that comes up. And you don't have to sit there and meditate for a half an hour.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who have maybe a subconscious but unspoken almost aversion to their own intuition, because in our society we have linked intuition with does that mean you're psychic? Does that mean mental illness? Is it the devil? Is it the devil? If thoughts are coming to my head, am I hearing people? Am I schizophrenic? And so I think that we have lost touch with our own intuition, and for a lot of society, particularly in the West, I think it's almost become an unspoken dirty word, or at least the concept, and because people are so afraid of what's everyone going to think of me, or does that mean that I need to go to the doctor and take a pill or whatever?
Right. I think so too. And this actually happened in my own family. I won't go into detail, but a family member was extremely religious, and it actually drove her crazy. I mean, it really was. It was hard on her.
Well,
so
she was a
sensitive. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So anyway.
And so I think that, and kind of going back around to the change in spirituality, I think that as the sense of religion is replaced with spirituality, we are kind of coming back to the beginnings of humanity, where we have to interpret things for ourselves. And suddenly that dogma is replaced with our own thoughts. And I think that's where some of this is coming from, because now our mind, where it's been distracted, the distraction in spirituality in some cases has been dogma and structured thought processes, that as we think about these other things and try to go the spiritual path, suddenly our mind, in tune with the universe, is filling in those gaps.
Yeah, it's almost like going back to school, and it's like we're getting a re-education, but we're kind of back to the kindergarten level, because we've gotten so distracted. We've gotten so far from that wisdom and information. It's always been available to us, but over time, obviously, we've shoved it under the rug. And so it's like almost like a re-education. And if you think about when you go to kindergarten, the first thing you do is you learn to color and write your name and do your 1, 2, 3, 4. You learn the basics. So maybe the reason why time prompts seem so simple on the outside is because they're relaying the foundation of learning that we need to return to.
I think there's a lot to that. I really do.
I want to read every one of your books. I love you.
You have a new fan.
You and I are right here. We're like homies.
I think he's going to Amazon right now. Well,
I write about stuff that I like to talk about. I mean, we have this conversation, and we love talking about this stuff. And so if you think about the process of writing a book and how long it takes, and then the editing, and then all of the promotion, it really better be a subject you like.
I agree with you.
You're going to shoot yourself in the head, I swear.
As an author myself, I have 4 out, but yeah, I agree completely. You don't want to be writing a subject you don't enjoy.
I don't publish my thoughts.
Exactly.
No, you hide them under 10 foil.
I've had my thoughts. Nobody wants to hear my thoughts.
Oh, now see, you don't know that.
Oh, I know.
It might change the world. It might shift the entire paradigm. You don't know.
I don't know. Or I do prison time. Either way, doesn't matter.
You give me time to think.
Yeah, I like to do more thinking.
We all have our stories to tell,
I agree.
I'm kidding. I don't have bad thoughts, people. Don't be calling the police right now, all right?
I'm slowly moving away. No. Marie, you've written quite a bit about concepts of reality, and what are your thoughts about the concept of reality that perhaps the mass public isn't tuned into?
Well, ever since I was little, I kind of just I loved ghosts and aliens and all kinds of weird stuff, and I loved science. My father was a geophysicist. I grew up with, science being a huge presence in my life, and it still is today. And the thing is, I never saw any separation between the two. I write a lot about the paranormal, but to me, there is a science behind it. We just haven't caught up to it yet. So in thinking about, well, how do we learn the science of the paranormal, it kind of helps if we get a grip on some of the theories about what reality itself is. We think of the paranormal as being a sort of another reality, an alternate reality. And really what it comes down to is it could very well be another reality. But first we need to understand how ours is structured, how ours functions. We are not even at that point yet. I mean, we think our reality is what our 5 senses conceive and perceive and the physical manifestations that we interact with. But that is, obviously, we've gotten to a point where we know better. We may not be able to prove that there are other realities, but we're pretty sure that they're there. And then you hear quantum physicists and you hear theoretical physicists talking about alternate dimensions, parallel universes, the multiverse, other timelines. And you start to really understand that our little teeny tiny corner of reality is part of what Larry and I like to call the grid. So if you can imagine a visual image of a 3-dimensional grid where you've got different levels, different layers of realities going up and down and going sideways, and they're all linked and interconnected, so there's different ways to get to each reality from the other. And that's how I perceive it. Now, I can't prove that, but based on all of the research that I've done into the paranormal, based on the science that I've been subjected to, I should say, and the science that I've learned and researched. I mean, because I grew up really in a house that was filled with my dad's college textbooks, astrophysics and geophysics and seismology and earth sciences, which I just love because there are so many clues to even the paranormal in nature and in what we already seem to think we understand about how the world works around us. And I just never thought there was a separation. So trying to define the paranormal is trying to define one of those or many of those other levels of the grid that we like to call it. Reality is not just one experience. It's not just one physical manifestation based on the perception of those that are experiencing it. It goes way beyond that. So for me, personally, the only way for me to wrap my mind around the grandness of that, the magnificence of that, is to think of a skyscraper. You've got all the different floors. Maybe it's a 30-floor skyscraper. And you've got different ways to connect one floor to the other. Each floor of that skyscraper is a different reality, even a different timeline, a different universe, what have you. So you've got elevators, you've got staircases, you've got escalators, you've got fire escapes going from one level to the other. You can jump out the window and fall to the bottom. I mean, there's another way to get from one level to the other. But I like to find a visual that can kind of help me understand that hidden infrastructure, if it's there, what it might look like, and then start to look for the different ways that we connect, the different connectors, the different mechanisms that we use to experience one level of reality and maybe experience another. And all of that actually manifested in the book that Larry and I wrote last year called The Grid, Exploring the Hidden Infrastructure of Reality. And it was really our way of just laying out this physical imagery that we could give people to get an idea of what it might be like based upon where we're at right now with our scientific knowledge and where we're at right now with our metaphysical, religious, and paranormal understandings, because I think it's all saying the same stuff, just in different ways.
Well, I think it's almost like a continue. You just have to look at it as a continuum of ideas and theories, and I very much agree with you, and I want to check that book out because that's my view. John?
That was freaking cool.
What happened?
There was a shadow that just walked across the archway.
Uh-oh.
I was like, what?
Hey.
It had dawned on me what it was, and I was like, ooh.
You see a shadow person?
Yeah, well, he just walked right in front of the arch.
Cool.
Oh, that's cool. They want to be a part of the show.
Yeah. Well,
Well, you know what? There's your synchronistic proof that there are other realities right there.
You know, I've noticed, I've been going through getting my Reiki attunements, and I've noticed each level of my attunement, I've become more and more, I've never been an optical sensitive. Mine's always been either hearing or in my head or whatever.
Right.
But I've noticed that every level of attunement, I am more optically attuned to what's going around. That's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm. I see more and more, entities, things.
And I've heard other people go through that too.
It's interesting.
And it's almost like, and now, okay, so here's the thing. Those things were always there, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You all of a sudden got the ability to be aware of them. So if you think about all the rest of the stuff your brain might be filtering out until you have an experience, and that's, not just for you, that's for all of us, how much information, how much stuff are we filtering out in our little piddly acceptance of reality?
Well,
that is there, and until we have an experience or something happens that opens us up a little more to seeing and perceiving. It's like, whoa, it's almost like a whole new world opens up to you.
You know, and I've always been this way. The society as I was growing up, to fit in or to feel like I was a part of, that wasn't a part of my life.
Oh,
and
absolutely. You're right. Mm-hmm.
I think that kids, we all know that kids are more sensitive. I mean, any of us in the paranormal know that. Yeah. And as they grow up, that society almost kind of beats it out of them in a way, so that they feel like that they belong. I'm a firm believer, and Lisa is too. Everyone is psychic. Mm-hmm. Everyone. It's just whether you allow it to come through or not.
Yeah, we just both have had experiences our whole lives. And
yeah, I agree. But do you think it's getting better for kids now, though, or for everybody?
Yes.
I mean, I kind of feel like it's more acceptable to talk about this stuff than.
I agree.
I think that is the one benefit of a lot of the paranormal TV shows.
Yeah.
Is that there is more acceptance and not viewed so much as the boogeyman.
Yeah.
And I see it more over time as, out and about. And if I have a team, a Paranormal Science Lab shirt on, I've been stopped everywhere from a gas station to the grocery store to the library to say, I had this happen to me once, and you become their therapist. They want to get the story out because they realize they can tell you. And I think that is one good function of the media. Although there have been some downsides to it.
I agree. I think there's been a lot of, I think the TV shows have really helped with opening it up quite a bit.
Definitely gone mainstream. Yeah.
What's that one, New Jersey Medium or whatever?
Oh, Long Island.
Long Island Medium. I mean, that's pretty common, and then John Edward years ago, he did his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie, what's her Brown? Sylvia Brown.
Yeah, but also just all the ghost shows and everything, so that people can come out and say, I had this experience. Let's face it, when 30 years ago, not many people would have just said, "Hey, I just saw a shadow man walk by."
I would.
Well, I probably would have too.
But we're weird.
But yeah, we are weird. So
the thing is that this stuff has always been going on, and it's like one of you said earlier, it's almost like society is coming around, catching up,
Well, and that's true. I think that our spirituality has changed, and I think that God, we could go on. Can I just have another hour with you, please? Really?
We'll have Marie back again. How's that?
I want to hey, Selena. I know Selena's in the chat room. Selena, you're not having your show. We're going to just keep going.
Remember, you see Selena in a few weeks. She's going to hurt you.
Oh yeah, good point. I love you, Selena. So, okay, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's a spiritual growth. I think that the world as a whole is coming to the understanding that your religious beliefs mean nothing to the collective.
Yeah. Right.
They're personal to you.
Personal to you, but nothing to the collective. And that's as a whole, we should learn that really our religion is love. And that's every faith out there and every spirituality out there. I've seen it go across memes on Facebook 100 times, but it's the truth. The fact is that love is the governing factor. And if you look at the way that the chakras are laid out on the body, the heart chakra is the center between heaven and earth.
Yeah.
That is the meeting point between those two things. So that tells you right there, as a whole, our whole body is filled. And made around love, and it's what all of our spiritualities are. And
no, you're fine.
I'm rambling.
I'm still rambling. Everything knows that, but our brains.
Right.
I think our brains are so easily hijacked by, distractions and ego and opinions and things like that. But you're right. There are these truths that are. They apply to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. And it's just a shame that so many people are focused on the stuff outside the center instead of the big shiny thing in the center, But
right.
I think it's getting a little bit better. I think that the fact that it's so easy to communicate with a lot of people now via the internet and social networking, people that do have unusual experiences are now starting to find out that they're not so unusual. And I think it's becoming more mainstream. It's becoming easier to talk about what you're going through, what you've experienced out in the open, and find other people that have had similar experiences and compare notes with. And, religion is still a huge force in this world, but I think it's losing its foothold to this spirituality where we all understand. It's not our differences that we're supposed to be focusing on. It's that common theme, that thread that ties us all together.
Exactly. Marie, we're getting close to the end of the show.
That was fast.
I want another hour with you.
We'll have to do a part 2 sometime. Let's do that.
Yes, we'll definitely will. But give a shout out for how people can get a hold of you and your books and get more information.
Well, the books are sold pretty much, brick and mortar bookstores and online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. We always encourage people to go into their local bookstores, so got to keep those guys in business. My website is mariedjones.com, and my website with Larry is paraexplorers.com, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marie, and we will definitely love to have you back in the future. And
I love you, man.
Absolutely, I'd love to come back. It was a fast conversation.
Yes, looking forward to do it again, and
I miss you.
John's having an experience.
I'm having a meltdown.
Is that shadow person back?
No,
we're in one of our haunted locations that we do tours at, so it's not unusual to find here. But for everyone in the chat room and listening in, we thank you. Come back next week, and we're going to be with Ryan Stroud, and we're going to be talking about urban legend, paranormal creatures versus real ones. And stay tuned
for Selena Rowan and Closer to Death.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.